Welcome to Just Minding My Business Media, LLC. We hope your day was filled with powerful possibilities, which you recognized and to which you were able to respond with positive results. Our first guest is Joyce Gerber, who is the producer of the Canna Mom Show, an award-winning podcast about women in the emerging cannabis industry, talking about, caring for, and giving voice to one canna story at a time. Joyce now adds her voice to the forthcoming anthology, Courage in Cannabis. Welcome, Joyce.
Thank you for having me. How are you tonight?
Good. Yes. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So tell us how you arrived on this journey.
So thank you, Ida, for having me tonight. I'm out here in Massachusetts, and I'm excited for this. I'm usually the person asking the questions, not person answering the questions. So it's always a little adjustment for me. So when I begin my own personal cannabis story, I always say cannabis was not my natural habitat. I am a lawyer by training. I'm a middle-aged mom of two. I've been married for almost 30 years. I really did believe cannabis was dangerous. I really believed all the things we were told. And you know, I don't think I'm the person you'd expect to be in cannabis. I wear pearls, I play tennis. This really is who I am. And it's true. I got into this industry really through that classic combination of isolation, desperation, and rejection. A last resort, which is really the health stories of a lot of the women in the industry, but this was my professional journey.
Okay. So tell us give us some, what your podcast is about. What's it called again?
My podcast is called The Canna Mom Show, and we are talking to women in this emerging industry. I say we're talking about caring for and giving voice to women in the emerging cannabis industry, and that we're, crushing this cannabis stigma around caregivers, moms, caregivers, one canna story at a time, because this plant is a caregiver. And the women in this industry are meeting our caregivers, and this industry should be built in our image. And I want to elevate these stories because it's important for them to be heard. And, and the flip side is I'm preserving these stories because in 10 years, this is going to be normal. We're going to forget what all the hoopla was about. And these stories of these women pioneers, literally pioneers across the country who are on this journey to normalize this plant and build businesses and create generational wealth and heal our planet.
Yes. And I like that you said heal our planet, because at the end of the day, most of the medicine, number one, most of the medicine, 90% is plant-based. So with that being said, cannabis is a plant. So why the resistance?
So I like to say we're living in the anomaly of history. So for 100 years, this plant has been demonized for very negative reasons. We can go into the history. I'm sure you may have talked to other guests who are coming in, talking about courage in cannabis, the Harry Anslinger phase, the Nixon phase, just racism, the enormity of all of our social ills can sort of be, I don't know, even just funneled down to this plant, the way they use this plant to hurt people, really. And she's a caregiver. So for 100 years, we've been living in this history that it's so dangerous. This plant is so dangerous, you have to go to jail for it. And that is what I believed. And we had DARE programs across this country to assure that young generations believe this. And we industrialized in a way that is very negative to our planet. And we could have been using hemp products. So this is only 100 years, really. And now we are trying to undo this story. And it's a very negative story. It is a story that is built on no foundations. And I think that is the power of the Canna Mom Show and stories in general. We are ruled by stories. The Bible, the Torah. I'm a religious person. I'm a Jewish person. I believe in faith. The Quran. We are ruled by stories. And these stories that we are sharing, the story that was created was wrong. It was negative. It has no foundation. And the stories I'm sharing are the truth. And they're helping to crumble this narrative that cannabis is so dangerous, because it isn't. And the other belief and the other idea that cannabis is some sort of a belief, this is a science. This is a science. We have an endocannabinoid system. We have receptors in our own body that receive the cannabinoids. It's not just from cannabis, it's from other things as well. So this whole idea that every level, I say cannabis connects everything from criminal justice to cosmetics. This is a huge industry, and we can figure out a way how to manage it again, but we have to get away from the stigma, and we have to understand this narrative is just wrong. And in these stories, the stories I'm sharing are helping to dispel the myth.
Yeah. And when does your show air?
So I do a show every week. I record a show every Wednesday, but I release a new show every Thursday. We're now in season 3. Today, I did a panel of cannabis nurses out here in Massachusetts, just talking about how they are working with mothers. One of the nurses is a specialist who works with Canna moms who, what do you do when you're pregnant? What do you do when your children are small? How do you handle anxiety as a mom? How do you use this plant medicine incorporated into your life? I talk about women my age and older. I'm 56. We literally know the least about it. We could use it the most. We have pains and aches and things going wrong with us. And we think like this is how we're supposed to feel. No, we don't have to feel bad. Cannabis doesn't solve everything. I know that's true when I talk about it like it does, but it has to be part of the pharmacopoeia. It has to be part of the package. Meditation, exercise, water, whatever. This can be part of it because our body needs cannabinoids. And I like to talk about that more than cannabis because we have receptors. So the idea that some of us have cannabinoid deficiencies, this is the truth of it. And that once we really, we talk about this medical and adult use, I talk about it as therapeutic. Once we have, once the science is on board, once we actually are able to study it properly, when we create these tests, we can find out, like you have an iron deficiency, you could have a cannabinoid deficiency, and we will have to get it out of this idea of recreational or adult use. It's all therapeutic, and how we need it in our bodies differs just like everything else.
Yes. What time does your show drop on Thursdays?
We do it on the morning. We drop a show every Thursday. I think my producer has it set up at 4:20. I don't know if that's true, but he used to drop. And we do a newsletter. If you're interested in being connected, we do send a newsletter every Thursday with the show out. We do quite a bit of social media work, and I'm trying to get out a little bit more and talk at real events. I mean, I feel like I'm a very authentic voice. I really am this person. I like politics. I am a lawyer. This industry needs voices. We need women voices, I believe. And I like to be part of that network of women's voices who are talking about this and trying to influence policy and change the perception and heal us. Because this really has healed me. And I say this openly. It's given me this really amazing community I never would have assumed I'd be part of. My children, when they were evacuated, they're in college, but when they were evacuated during the pandemic and had to come home, and by that point, I was into the cannabis world. And I live in Massachusetts. I did not know it was going to be essential. I was running around stockpiling salves and tinctures and flour. I was bringing it all home. And God knew how I was going to survive with my children back. We had no toilet paper. But when they came home, I would much rather be in a pandemic with a bunch of stoners people than drinkers. This is what I've learned. And we had a very good, I will say, 5 months of lockdown with my family, and we survived it really well. And I think part of it, honest to God, is we were balanced and we were together and we weren't angry, and we used this plant to communicate with each other. And it was really, I wish I didn't use it when my children were younger. I was a very anxious mother. I could stop at the liquor store. I could get a bottle of wine between work and daycare, but I couldn't smoke a joint. But now I know I would have been a mother. I think I could have enjoyed my experience as a mother better because I was just always stressed, which is part of what my essay is about in the story, in the book.
Okay. So before we get into your part in the book, how do people connect with you?
I am on Instagram. I am the Canna Mom Show. You can find me at the Canna Mom Show on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I have a lot of personal connections. If you want to find Joyce Gerber on LinkedIn, love to find you. We have a great website, the Canna Mom Show, that has all of our episodes. We are also everywhere you listen to your favorite podcast: Apple, Google, iTunes, Stitcher, the whole array. And love to hear from you. I have guests booked out through March at this point. We are a sponsored podcast, so anyone listening, if you want to connect to Canna curious women who like to buy stuff, reach out to me. We offer 4 4-episode packages, and we're trying to find someone who might want to sponsor a little bit longer, because I want to keep telling these stories. And the flip side is also preserving these for history, because this is important that these women's voices get recognized, because I joke that I only talk to women in the industry. So when I go out in the real world and I'm like, oh, wow, there are men here too. I know that these voices can get drowned out. So it's very important that these stories get elevated, because these women, honest to God, they're elevating the professionalism, and they can really build a new kind of industry if we just, if we build this force together. I really believe that.
Yes, I believe that too. And after listening to many of you from this book, it has been an eye opener for me, for sure.
I mean, I didn't understand this world. I knew nothing about it. And, and again, I look like a very traditional middle-class American white lady who, God, this isn't what people would expect. I'm very involved with local politics. I worked at my polling station last week. We had a municipal election. People now know what I do, and they want to talk to me about this. I just think it's interesting. And I think they can hear these stories from me. And I do think I can have an influence over some of our local politicians, because they can see me. They know who I am. I don't maybe look like somebody who they think is in the industry. And and I can be a little bit funny. And I think that opens up people's hearts and minds. When they can laugh a little bit, they can hear what you're saying.
Yes. So let me just ask you, what's the name of your chapter in the book?
Finding My Place in Cannabis, I believe, is my chapter.
Okay. I know most people when we ask that question, we've been so involved in conversation. It's like, oh, what is the name of my chapter?
What? Did I write a story? What? Why am I here? Why are we just having a good time? Are we just talking?
Yes. Wow. So this has been amazing, Joyce. And we are definitely looking forward to following all of your work that you do. So thank you so much for saying yes to Just Minding My Business, and we look forward to more from you.
Thank you so much for talking with me. I really enjoyed this. Have a great night.
You too.
Next, we welcome Charlana McKeithen, who is the founder and executive director of the Political Action Committee and nonprofit Cannabis Laws Matter, CLM, formerly Garden State NORML. CLM advocates for cannabis laws and regulations that will work on behalf of the cannabis patients, consumers, and those who have been historically and disproportionately affected by our nation's war on drugs. Charlana is a patient, advocate, educator, citizen lobbyist, public speaker who interacts with many diverse groups, including community leaders and politicians. Her perspective: Charlana is a 46-year-old disabled Black woman who uses medical cannabis as a replacement for multiple prescriptions, including opiates. Welcome, Charlana.
Hello, good evening. How are you?
Welcome. Wow. How did you get on this road? Tell us what sparked it.
What sparked it was health issues. Like some of my friends growing up, I did not indulge in cannabis, marijuana back then. It didn't sit right with me. It made me tired and sleepy. And how are you going to hang out with your friends when you sleep? So that just wasn't for me. So I didn't do it at a young age. Like I said, people around me did. They did it to study. I didn't know the benefits of studying, because that I might have went down that path. But I was also a little bit afraid of mama. So I didn't do everything my friends did. I was too scared to who I had to go home with and answer to. So that was another reason why I didn't consume cannabis at a young age. But down the road, I started dealing with mental health problems, and it was severe depression and bipolar disorder. I was diagnosed with it eventually. And, in our community, it's a stigma on mental health and medication. And so I was constantly being told, you don't need that, you don't need that, don't take it. But yet I was dealing with these issues by myself and I had no one there to help me through it. And so, the doctor started saying, listen, if you're serious about this, then you'll take these medications. And so after a lot of back and forth, I finally did it because I wanted to get better. And what was happening is I would take the medication, feel great. I'm going out because I wouldn't go out for 45 days at a time. It started to become a pattern. And then when I did have that window when I would go out, I would try to get as much done as possible because I knew what was coming. So like I said, I would feel great. And then I would start feeling down and go down and down. And I started having suicidal ideations. I started thinking about committing suicide. And so I went to the doctor, explained what's going on. They changed the medication. Same pattern would happen. I would feel great for a while, then I would start spiraling down. And so after going through this, they put me on just about every medication out there that insurance would pay for. And the only other option was to kind of take a DNA test to see what medications would work for me. But 9 times out of 10, my insurance wouldn't pay for them. Oh. And so it's just started getting really bad and started to become scary when I kept having the suicidal thoughts because it was becoming stronger and stronger each time I went down that path. And so, I got really frustrated. I had enough. And so I started doing research. I said, I can't be the only person having this problem. And so what I found out is there's another type of bipolar that can't take antidepressants. And so what I had to do, yes, they make you suicidal. So what I had to learn to do was change the process, my thought process, and what I took in. I couldn't take in negative movies, TV shows, listen to negative things, have negative people around me. I had to change my life because that was my only option because I couldn't take the medication. Yes. And it was hard because you're trying to change how the chemicals process in your brain. And it took a long time. It was hard work, and I still had these doctors who would still convince me to get on medication. So that's why I kind of stopped seeing therapists until I found someone who would respect what I told them and what was happening with me. So a little bit down the road, I started having problems with fibroids on my uterus. And so it was so bad to the point I would become anemic and I had to have multiple blood transfusions. And from that, we believe I now have fibromyalgia, autoimmune disease. And guess what you take for fibromyalgia? Antidepressants and pain medicine. And I can't take antidepressants and I don't want to go down the road of opioids. And when that happened, I pretty much lost my quality of life. I didn't go out the house at all for a long time. I needed at that point a caregiver, which my insurance paid for, like that level of caregiver, not you asking somebody to come over and help you a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, I struggled even walking from room to room in the house. So, being independent, and I was still fairly young. I was late 30s, dealing with all of this. They don't have classes to teach you how to be disabled. So as a young person, going through that was extremely difficult. I kept most of it to myself because I knew how to help, but I didn't know how to accept help. And so it became a struggle, of a hard lessons learned struggle. And so the reason why I ended up down the path of cannabis because I was always interested in it. I was eyeing it from a, business perspective, kind of curious perspective. And so a family member introduced cannabis to me from the medicinal side. And when that happened, I started to get my life back. It wasn't full 100%, but it was definitely better than where I was. I was able to go out. I even started speaking at events, going to conferences. It was still painful, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't to what I was dealing with in the past without medicinal cannabis. So that's how I ended up getting in this space.
My goodness, I heard you say some really important things. You talked about research, doing your research. That helped you. Oh my goodness, that is a powerful story.
Thank you.
It's a powerful story. Because people, and I'm even thinking to myself as I was listening, I'm thinking, okay, so when you said that you started taking cannabis, you started feeling better, how long did it take you to notice that there was something different in the way that cannabis was affecting you physically, emotionally, mentally?
Honestly, because of how bad I was, it was immediately. Certain types of cannabis, depending on how you consume it, whether it's tinctures, vapes, smoking, it took effect immediately. And what someone like me, you have to learn to microdose. And microdosing means, every couple of hours you need to consume again so that the pain continues to level off. It's just like prescription drugs. When the doctor says, take this pill every 4 to 6 hours, and then take this pill, in this time frame, it's the same thing, but just you're using cannabis instead.
Okay, wow. All righty. That's, again, it's knowledge because people don't know. People are thinking that people are sitting around vaping or however you want to take it, 24 hours a day. And that's not what it is. And like I said, I think one of the most important things that you mentioned is research. You did your research because you were curious. You were hearing about it. So my prayer is that our listening audience, that those who think they might need this or be able to use it, that they go and do their research.
Absolutely.
Have that knowledge for themselves.
Yes.
Absolutely. See, I have a technical background, and so research and looking up things is very important to getting your goals accomplished in our industry. And so that was really important. Plus, when I started going down that path, my faith saved me. I've been in Catholic school most of my life and grew up in the Baptist church, and that was a no-no. And so that's when my faith kicked in and said, Char, this ain't right. And so that's when I had enough. I was angry at that point, and I started doing my research. And it was scary that this information is out there, but the doctors didn't know.
I love the fact that you said your faith kicked in.
Yes.
Because
yes.
Again, this is my belief. I believe that everything that we need, God created and put it on the earth for our use. Now, there's some things that we're not going to use because they're poisonous to us, but they're fine for animals. But what we need is here. And a lot
Absolutely.
of the medical program is to make sure that we don't get what God has already provided for us. And it takes faith to say, okay, well, I know what you're saying, but this is what I know.
Right. And I was at 15 pills a day, multiple times a day. And so once I added cannabis, I was down to maybe 3 or 4. And some of them was like supplements just to make sure everything stayed on track. but in terms of my faith, I told my pastor about what I do. You know, we're Facebook friends. I talked about it, and the change I've seen in him is when he does his sermons, he doesn't knock medicinal cannabis. And so if we start having these conversations in our communities and inside the church and talk to the pastors and even do demonstrations to show how these products work, you could do something as simple as a hemp salve and use the cream so that people can see you can start moving and being more functional with these products. And that's the hemp plant. You know, and it's also from a business perspective. So you have health as well, you know, and those are things our communities need to look at.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Talk to me a little bit about the political action committee that you have.
Oh, okay. So I have two nonprofits. One is a 501c3 and one is a 501c4 under Cannabis Laws Matter. And it was formerly Garden State NORML. I was the only NORML chapter in the state of New Jersey, founder and executive director. So by me traveling and speaking at different places about cannabis, and you can't take it with you from state to state, the prices are very high in our state. And so I wanted to start seeing the reform from another perspective. How can I help change? What can I do to get the voice out for the Black and Latino communities, especially where it was hit hardest by the war on drugs? So I worked with several organizations in New Jersey, and we've lobbied, testified in front of the New Jersey State Assembly and Senate. I've spoken at the New Jersey State Democratic Convention in 2019. It's about getting yourself out there, and trust me, it wasn't easy because I would go to a function or walk around the State House holding back my tears from the pain. and then I would go home and have to pass out for a couple of days and get it back together. You know, so it's been a journey because New Jersey has legalized adult use cannabis. And so, you know, this is the next journey, working with, again, our minority communities to help people either from an entrepreneurial perspective, or not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur. Some people want to get a good paying job to take care of their family. So however our communities need to benefit, that's what we're doing now in terms of trying to help people benefit from the cannabis industry. After all, the advocates paved the way.
That's right. That's right. So how do people get in contact with you if they want to become a part of what you're doing?
They can either go to our website, Cannabis Laws with the S Matter.org. You can email me, Charlana1@hotmail.com. That's CHARLANA, the number 1@hotmail.com.
All right. And in the book, what's the name of your chapter?
Shining a light. And basically that means shining a light on who we are and fighting through whatever we're going through, fighting the industry in terms of getting what's owed to the communities hurt hardest by the war on drugs. Just it's something that's in you that can fight this fight. Whatever you're fighting, whether it's your health, whether it's, you know, social justice, social equity, having it in you to do it.
And I'm telling you, listening to your testimony and what you're doing and doing it in pain and still out there doing, I definitely commend you for.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go right
No,
ahead.
I was going to say, and one last thing, I believe in advocating across state lines. So I was also advocating in Delaware also doing the lobbying work, walking around their state house in Dover. So there was a lot of work put in, and there continues to be a lot of work. So we have to help our fellow states to get this done.
Yes. Okay, so if anybody wants to get involved, this is the lady. Definitely reach out to her, because I think that, it's very important. Why should something that can help us physically, mentally, and financially be treated like a demon?
Mhm.
Absolutely. And our legislators need to see our faces.
Yes.
We can't say this is beneficial and it helps, but it helps our community, but they're not seeing our faces saying we want this.
Mhm. Well, we're looking forward to definitely following you and supporting you
Thank you.
in this endeavor. So we will definitely stay in touch and see how we can make a difference in the cause.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you having me and hearing my story.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Candy Flores. Candy Flores was born and raised in Texas. She is married with 4 children and a granddaughter. Prior to becoming disabled in 2008, she was the Assistant Chief of Operations at a local pediatric office. Her failing health led her to the discovery of a powerful plant medicine to be found in cannabis. Candy states, "Cannabis saved my life and has helped me live life with more meaning, less flare-ups, less hospitalizations, and less pharmaceuticals. Definitely the best natural medicine remedy for my health." Thank you, Candy, and welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yes. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, what does that mean? It changed your life. Tell me about that.
Well, I was able to feel myself again after so long being a different person and, going through all these medical issues. It definitely changed my life. I was able to feel myself again and not a zombie or anyone, all the other feelings I had.
Do you
Okay.
feel comfortable talking about what some of those ailments were so that we can understand where the cannabis would apply?
Yes, ma'am. I have fibromyalgia. I have 4 different autoimmune disorders, including undifferential connective tissue disease with the lupus and the Sjogren's syndrome, Raynaud's syndrome. I also developed CRPS when I went through the emergency morphine pump removal. So spina bifida, I have a herniated disc. See. I have Hashimoto's disease as well. But cannabis saved me from all that. Less, like I said, less flare-ups, less of everything.
Okay. So it's not a cure, but has some of that been put in remission, or is it just at a level
Yes.
now where you can?
Yes, actually, back in remission, and between now and then, since I started, I've had very few flare-ups, and if I've had a flare-up, it's been very, minimal compared to what I used to have, and have hospitalizations and ER visits, and very, very ill to where I could barely walk. I'd be in bed, just hurting. Very limited. Life was very limited.
So how did you come in contact with cannabis?
One of my husband's coworker's wife was a cancer survivor, and that was what she used to treat her cancer. She introduced it to me, and that's how I first tried it.
So
So,
what was, okay, go ahead,
go ahead,
Ida.
go ahead, Ruth.
No, the same question I just asked earlier. Once you started using the cannabis, how long did it take you to realize that this was really having a positive effect in your life and in your health?
Oh, I would say I started seeing a difference little by little at first, because of course I was going through withdrawals. So that was the first thing that was, helping with the withdrawals. And because that with the CRPS, I developed more pain from what I was already suffering from.
Okay.
So it just, that's what it started off with helping me with the withdrawals. Then, slowly, gradually, when I started, past that, I had less pain, just less inflammation, just a little bit of everything that was really helping me. At the same time, I was seeing my oncologist every year for biopsy, and because of the Hashimoto's, and I've had some previous growth there. So that first year when I did see him for my yearly appointment, he came in and told me that I wouldn't need the biopsy, and that I would be seeing him every year instead of every 3 years instead of yearly, for the reason that the tumor had shrank, and whatever I was doing to keep doing it. So I told him the only thing I've done different is I went natural. I got off pharmaceuticals and I'm using cannabis and CBD. So he said, keep doing what you're doing. He says it's working for you. So I see him every 3 years now. So I wasn't using it for that. I was using it for pain management, but I knew it had other benefits. But at the time, I wasn't thinking of, I was still learning, more about it and reading and wanting more. So I realized that it was also helping, my Hashimoto's, because I had a growth that they would biopsy every year. So I was very pleased.
Yes, and that's the one good
Awesome.
thing about natural supplements and natural things. It has benefits for different things. A lot of times we don't even realize what the other benefits are. We just kind of focus on it like you did for one thing.
Yes.
But then we learn as we continue to do it that it also helps with this, and then it helps with that, you know what I'm saying? So you get like a big old constellation prize, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what I love about natural as opposed to pharmaceuticals. The pharmaceuticals focuses on one thing. It might help
Yes.
something else, but 90% of the time it causes other issues.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
You have to go back and
Yeah,
get something else to take care
Yeah,
of that.
because I was on about 15 to 16 medications.
Wow.
And after that, now I'm only on one medication. It took me time. I weaned off, of everything I was on, and just now I'm doing it naturally, So I'm glad I don't have to. I have that less expense, with the pharmaceuticals, less, because every medication gave me something else, and then so I would get another medication until finally I was walking around with a medicine bag.
Yes. Yeah.
I just visited a friend, and I've seen this more than once, but literally piles of medication. And it's like, how do you take that all in one day?
Mm-hmm.
And how can the human body, you just have to be amazed that the human body is capable to withstand all the stuff that we put in ourselves.
Mhm.
And yet we know that, just like you're saying, it helps one thing, something else breaks down. But so many people are in that situation. And I know for myself, if I get to 5 medications, something's got to go. Because beyond that, they say beyond 5, they can't tell what medication is doing what. They
Right.
really can't tell what's going on.
Right.
So I limit myself to 5, and I actually try to limit myself to 1. You know,
That's good.
I know that my body does not do well with medication. It just doesn't. I don't care what I've been given. There comes a point where I have to turn it off. It has to be turned off.
Yes.
I guess I get that. I have my mother's physical makeup. She was the same way. She didn't do well with
So
pharmaceuticals.
Miss Candy, now that you have this new life, tell me what you did, what you're doing with all of this greatness that has happened to you and blessings. So what are you doing now?
So I just wanted to share and save everyone. I wanted to help everyone, whether or not they were going to, take my advice, or I just wanted to talk about it and share, just even if it wasn't for them, but maybe a loved one, or, a friend or a coworker. So what I started doing was I started traveling with a cannabis expo, Lucky Leaf, and at the same time I'm opening a CBD wellness shop, wellness and boutique here in Corpus. My business partner is from San Antonio, and we should be opening soon, probably by December 1st, God willing. We've had some setbacks, but not giving up. We're gonna keep going. Just want to be a little different, not just a CBD shop, but we're gonna have a lot of extra. We want to provide the education, just a little bit of everything. We basically, I've done the hard work. I feel, I've already tested and, gone through the hard part. So now I want to help others on their cannabis and CBD journey. What I do is I start from day one and help them, journal and just, check on them and, just be there for them for support, and just, I just want to keep sharing and educating, and it's amazing, it could change your life.
Yes, and you are
And
amazing. You are
yeah,
very
and
amazing.
it really helps when they come back and, thank me and just tell me, I was, terrified to try it, but after, I'm doing really well. I just love their testimonies. That's what keeps me going.
Mhm. So if people want to connect with you, how do they do so?
Perla, Texas, LLC. We are on Instagram and on Facebook. They can also find me on Instagram on Pure Life, Pure Wellness, or just look me up on Facebook, just Candy Flores.
All right, well, Candy, this has been amazing. You're definitely a testimony for sure. And we are looking forward to following you and as you move through your next phase of your life.
Thank you.
So
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
Thank
saying
you.
yes.
Thank you for being here. Our next guest is Andrea Salas. Andrea Salas is the visionary officer of Healthway Education Systems and Be Well on Purpose, a lifestyle in cannabis. Her desire for clear cannabis conversations has led her to address the overwhelming need for healthcare education, responsible patient care, and the continued social impact of targeted communities in cannabis. Healthway provides a catalog of education modules, including what physicians need to know, cannabis and children, cannabis and opioids, as well as autoimmune care with cannabis. She is now a contributing author to the anthology Courage in Cannabis. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, how are you? Thank you.
Welcome, Miss Andrea. So how are you this day? And tell us how you got started in this cannabis world.
Absolutely. I am wonderful. So I am in the South. So Texas is South, even though we think we are our own country sometimes. But I started in cannabis several years ago, and I started on my journey with my mother. Now, what's funny, Ida, is I've always been a proponent for legalization. And I tell people, you can't test me, not that, because I use it for everything. And having a culinary background, I knew how to cook with it. So, I started with my mother because I became her primary caregiver. And, I tell everybody she had everything but cancer. And I incorporated cannabis into her diet many years ago. And being a woman from Louisiana, and Southern grown and faith fed, and just, it was just an amazing opportunity to introduce it to her. And that's where my journey started.
What enabled you to, or made you think about using cannabis?
Well, she had, she's on a number of pills, right? And what was happening at the same time, I was resigning from my career to take care of her full time. But I had several clients. And so I had a client on one hand who's saying, hey, Andrea, I just invested in a grow operation and a dispensary in California. You have to remember, this is back in 2013. So this was even still new for them inside of what the legal structure of being in business of cannabis was. So I've got this client here that's saying, hey, can you help me figure it out? I'm like, I don't know anything. I don't even know where to start. And me taking care of my mother. And so simultaneous, these things are happening where this door just opened for me and cannabis became a part of my lifestyle. And so it started with me trying to understand what is the business of cannabis, but in so doing, how do I take care of my mother when I have resigned from my business, right? And so I started giving her cannabis and saw an immediate response with her.
So then you segued actually into the business of cannabis.
I did. And so when my client, he was a client of mine, and he wanted to get started with cannabis in Texas. And so this was when Texas had first began discussing any form of legalization. And we're still considered very behind the eight ball, very much so in the state of Texas. But at the time, they were discussing back in 2000, from 2012 till about 2014, bringing on their own compassionate use program. And so I started having to research what compassion truly was, right? You kind of have to reference it back to scripture and other things. What is truly compassion, and why does it always have this interchanging with cannabis, compassion and cannabis, right? So I had to understand what they were trying to pass. And when you do that, it takes it from a business perspective to an advocacy perspective. You really don't have a choice because people want to exhaust every option. They don't know that, but that's what they're doing when they're wanting to incorporate cannabis into their diet, into their medical regimen, into their protocols, and what they do daily for a better quality of life. You don't have a choice but to be an advocate,
Mm-hmm. That actually makes sense. That actually makes sense.
It does, because cannabis is for the body.
Right.
And there are so many people that have ailments that require relief,
Right.
to say the least. And we all know that some of the pharmaceutical things that they give you does not provide that.
There's not a protocol to take you off the medicine, Ida. It's designed to keep you on the medicine. And I tell people I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV, right? But I am wise enough to know that if someone is being prescribed 15 to 20 medications, how is there any resolve of this?
Yes.
Right? And when I can choose to use something that, for my mother who was in her 70s, that has been trained that this is evil, right? This is the devil's lettuce. And you've been misled, and it's for our good. And so you have to understand that in so many instances that's not a culture for us, especially for those that look like me, look like you. That's not our culture, to not listen to the doctor, that there may be another option for me, and I can use cannabis as a front line and not have it be my last option.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And we can eat it. We can put it in our food. I tell people, Ida and Ruth, you could never test me because I don't smoke, but I drink it in my tea. I put it in my barbecue sauce. I put it in my yogurt. I rub it on my skin. I wash my face with it. It's a part of me being well. And I choose to add cannabis to that.
Mhm. You know, it's really interesting, the whole subject, as we listen to everyone's story, their input and their experience with cannabis. What constantly comes to my mind is that it's nothing new. This plant is nothing new. Native Americans used it for probably hundreds, maybe thousands of years, with no one stumbling around high. They knew how to use the plant, when to harvest it, how to make different substances, just like you're saying. Throw it in the soup, whatever, make a poultice out of it for healing wounds. They had all that knowledge. The same thing with tobacco. Tobacco in itself is not evil. It, again, can be used as a healing source, especially for any kind of wounds. And I believe it also can be used for snake bite. So it's like the old wisdom is coming back.
Right.
I often say that my mother was a nurse, a registered nurse from the old school. She was in that transition, 1920s, 1930s, when the Flexner Report came out and all of this knowledge that you're talking about was demonized.
Yes.
Because they had come up with the pharmaceuticals, how to use the oil resins to create pharmaceuticals. So they had to demonize all of this other knowledge. And they took over the universities, so that universities weren't even allowed to teach these things, which is why today most doctors know nothing about nutrition, because all that went along with the old knowledge. So to hear all of you have the courage to talk about cannabis, to be advocates for cannabis in its various forms, for its various purposes, is world changing. This is a global change. It's a global change in mindset about what is medicine. What is medicine? What is the medicine that's meant for our bodies as humans, not as, laboratory rats, but as humans. And we wouldn't even want to do that to laboratory rats. It's a different way of thinking, and it has to have other effects. It's going to branch off into other ways, because people are going to start thinking, wait a minute, you need to tell me. And I'm going to tell you, my mother's long been dead. But if I was in that generation of potheads and ganja and you name it, okay? If I had known that what we call back then marijuana, which what we really needed was the cannabis aspect of it, could have saved my mother's life and health,
Right.
I would have used it. I would have used it and just born whatever
You're
happened
absolutely
would have
right.
happened.
You know, I was in the doctor's office with my mother on the many times we were at the doctor, and she was having a procedure, and I'll never forget her cardiologist asking me. He knew that I was in legal cannabis. Cannabis is my business. I mind my business with cannabis.
Mhm.
And he's curious. He says, I have people asking about, can they use it? He was, you know, a pretty progressive doctor. And he says, I have nowhere to send them. I wouldn't even know what to start to even tell them anything that wouldn't get me in trouble, get them in trouble. And so fear is a powerful thing, isn't it? And if I can make you afraid of something that gives you choice, right? You take your power back. And so if I'm so that's what cannabis does. That is the concern when we talk about the economy of cannabis, because not only are we wanting to be well on purpose, cannabis directly affects the economy, right? So when we were first shut down, right, in California and those states that are legal, it was essential that they had those dispensaries open, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because cannabis responds to so many conditions of care. To even say that my medicine to keep me sane, right? To calm my heightened nerves.
Yes.
I don't need to drink. I can consume a plant responsibly and not have as many detrimental things happen to me in which alcohol does. But the amazing part about we still fighting for legalization is the women that come behind it, right? Even when there was prohibition when it came with alcohol and a number of prohibition instances, cannabis is no different.
Mm-hmm.
We take care of our families. We make those decisions for our aging parents. We make those decisions for our children. And we can make the decision that I want to exhaust every option that's available to me without the consequence of me being concerned about whether or not I'm going to be charged, I'm going to go to jail, or there's something negative to me exhausting those options. And that's what cannabis, that's the power of cannabis. That's the courage you have in cannabis to say that it is my business.
Right now. I
Well
know
said.
that's right. Wow.
Well said.
So what is the name of your chapter in the book?
Being well on purpose. I started that has been something near and dear to me. And it is, I lost my daughter. My daughter passed away. My oldest daughter passed away. It'll be 4 years this December. And I knew that even inside of what was happening inside of her psychosis, right? That I know there was a strain with her name on it, right? There's a varietal with her name on it. We don't discuss our mental health like we should.
Absolutely.
And in order for us to be physically well, to be well for ourselves, to be well for our family, to be well for our career, what does that mean? And do you really want to be well? And if you do, you need to do it on purpose. You need to be intentional about doing it. Because I can say, hey, you know what, why don't we try cannabis? But if you don't believe you're going to be well, my concern is, will you? Mm-hmm. And so it's being well on purpose and exhausting every option, and cannabis can be a part of that.
Absolutely. Wow. I just love your swagger, I should say. It's definitely authentic, and you're right. Absolutely. Belief is important in anything that you do. because whatever you believe, that's what it is.
That's what it is.
That's exactly what it is. So how do people get in contact with you?
They can contact me on Instagram at bewellonpurpose.life, because we give life with cannabis. Or you can reach me at Andrea at andreasalas.com.
Oh, righty. Well, this has been awesome with you. And we are looking forward to more collaborations, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Ida and Ruth. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we welcome A.J. Warren. For over 2 decades, A.J. Warren has advocated for cannabis. He is an engineer in the field of research and development. During the past year, he has assisted in the process and operating procedures to manufacture, recycle, and incorporate hemp as a viable material in our laboratory for the purpose of sustainability. AJ vows he will keep fighting until real progress is made in the arena of cannabis with a view to a better world for everyone. Welcome, AJ.
Unmute, AJ. You on mute. We can't hear you. Can't hear you. Okay, just unmute yourself.
Oh, are you on your, oh, he can't hear us, can he?
Oh, he's unmuted. Hey, and AJ, can you hear us now?
Hey, everyone hear me?
Hey,
Yes, we can hear you.
are you on a
Awesome,
phone?
awesome. Yeah, I'm on my computer. It's a phone tablet thing.
Okay, can
Yeah, I
you
am
turn it the
currently.
horizontal way for us? So
Yes,
that way we
ma'am.
get a good picture.
There we go. Let me see here. That better?
We'll work with it. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Like the long way.
Oh,
Like this.
elongated? Yeah, let's do that.
There
Ah,
you go.
that is so much better. How you
Awesome.
doing?
I'm doing good, doing good. How are you guys this evening?
Good, good, good. So tell us how you got on the cannabis journey, because I heard 2 decades.
Yeah, and I'm only 3 decades in, realistically. So ever since I was, realistically, it was since infancy, honestly. It was incepted in my family much before I was here. But obviously with prohibition and everything, it was always, the hush hush in the family type thing, which is fine, it sucked, but now here we are, right? Progressing.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far back as I can remember, it's been around me. And with my mom, she was a home health care RN for 45 years. So she really helped the communities that she served, from Texas and Indiana, Ohio, Illinois. She really did a lot of work, and a lot of amazing work. She unfortunately passed this year. So she and her legacy, I wanted to make sure that story that I mentioned in the book with one of her patients, who we'll consider a gentle giant, really took off for me in the cannabis realm. It was an eye-opener at such an early age, because not only did we see her being suppressed with her locality where she was allowed to live, the individual I'm talking about, my mom, treated, she really needed some sort of healing method, and cannabis was realistically the one thing that helped. And it had to do mainly with her endocannabinoid system, with her immunity and the transmission within her receptors to help rebuild her immunity, because she was a weak patient. She couldn't get out of bed without cannabis. And so seeing that prevalency at such an early age, it was prolific. But I saw that with my mom, and then with my dad, I kind of understood a little bit better too. He had constantly been growing far back as 60s, I'd say early 60s at that. But he was pretty lucky that during Vietnam, he was aircraft carrier fleet mechanic. So he was on the top deck working on the F-4 Phantoms in the Mediterranean. But what was odd was both of his brothers served on the same boat. And so when they would go offshore, you know, they would go to like Morocco or Turkey. And out there they had hashish at the time, which nowadays we call, you know, rosin or whatever it may be. So he became a connoisseur much early on in the, you know, what we would consider like fine wine, where champagne is really only from Champagne, France. And that was kind of how it was with that, right? So they, you know, had already started a seed bank back then, which through the family lineage, I'm essentially the curator of that at this point. Our family genetics that have proceeded much more than what any of these in the industry are commonly known as, from the common names and so forth. The ones that we work with are very unique because they were made for individual people. So that was kind of the thing with us. It wasn't until I really saw like my upbringing years later where, you know, it was high poverty rate, high crime rate where we lived, but my mom really felt she was doing a service to the community. So we stayed, and she took a lot of losses financially, monetarily, should I say, just so she could help those who couldn't get help. And, you know, that's why I think it's absolutely amazing, her story. And that could be a book in and of itself, of course, but, you know, to be able to see at such a close distance, people being thrown in jail or even killed, extorted, etc., surrounding cannabis, it didn't make sense. So that's when I really divulged in aspects of prohibition, because, you know, with the 1920s and alcohol and all that, it's what follows or immediately precedes that with people like Harry Anslinger from the United States government, who, you know, all we know, initiated the prohibition aspects, or put a tax stamp on cannabis, or what they were calling marijuana at the time, which I still don't use that term myself. I consider it racism at its finest, from the core, the root of that word, especially when used with a J and not an H. So, you know, we really, as a family, tried to love and respect that plant. So I'll fast forward a few years, but I ended up, you know, petitioning here in the state of Ohio to end prohibition. And we were petitioning back in 2009, 10, 11, 12, under the super PAC here in Ohio named Responsible Ohioans for Cannabis. Fast forward a few years, and our grassroots efforts were finally coming full circle, where we had a name, people knew us. We advocated highly for judicial exonerations, especially through the process prior to being convicted, for certain individuals for simply growing a plant that, you know, they're growing for their epileptic child, or a child with fetal alcohol syndrome who's also withdrawing, or had withdrawn, I'm sorry, at their birth from opiates or opioids, causing some significant issues later on down the road. Because in the area we're at here in Dayton, Ohio area, it's one of the worst opiate epidemics. So when I came here to Ohio, I was like, man, there's just something not right. And at any means, I started to dig in more and more. And that's when I built a very strong relationship with my uncle and my cousin, who were from this area, who are natives to this land. And they, on a separate side, gave me different perspectives. And those were the ones who we did the political action committee stuff with. Well, those two also recently had passed. And so when we were doing that political action committee in Ohio and built up all this momentum, a group of investors came in and tried to overtake our state constitution with their name under their PAC as Responsible Ohio. And this is in 2015. So here we were years and years and years, you know, grindstone, neck on the line scenario, risking everything while still trying to do exactly what we had been doing, to then just kind of be shuttered out entirely. And we really understood then that it wasn't a marketplace for the poor. It wasn't a marketplace for people of color. And something had to change. You know, unless I had $1 million, I wasn't even invited to that party, right? And if you do this for a passion, you're not rich. I assure you, you don't have anything in that regard, because that's what you're trying to do, is fulfill that end of prohibition. That's been my aspect from the whole beginning. And like I said, to be suppressed like that, where not only did they get such a similar name, but they are angry too. And it was an unfortunate thing when it went to the ballot and our citizens here in Ohio voted no, because they understood the monopoly aspect of it, 10 people holding that whole market, when we have people who served life prison sentences for simple possession, and we still do. People like Derek Harris, who was a veteran, he had served 5 years for less than 1 gram of cannabis, and he was a vet. He had risked his life, and this is in Louisiana. And people like Derek Harris, or other people like the Canadian Mark Emery, who essentially helped dismantle the stigma around cannabis for all of Canada. You know, he was extradited here to the United States, to Washington State, for 5 years for selling cannabis seeds. And it's just insane that they would do such a process for one person. And get this, while he was there, and you know, while we were here petitioning for his freedom, because we did that back then before it was a thing, because we've always cared. It was insane to see Washington State go legalized and then keep this man in prison. This man went on to legalize a country in his regards. So people like that, you know, who have to go to jail, who had to suffer, who had to lose their freedom, whether you're a citizen here or not, you under our 13th Amendment, you become a slave. And that's insane today for cannabis. Absolutely insane. And so my generation and my lineage, my heritage, my understanding and respect and love for that plant, by any means, until we finish that line, I can't step away. And so with my portion of the book, I really do call for people to kind of take action, to stand up and to motivate, because whether like with what I like with music, you know, that's a huge motivating factor for a lot of people. And there's a lot of really good cannabis music out there, or things people have heard. And I'm hoping they start to really see that it's just insane that we're still at this point in the 2020s, you know?
Yes, I agree. Alcohol is way worse.
I agree. And that, just like that, alcohol, I've had a friend who was 31 years old. I'm 31 now. He would have been 35. He passed away, liver failure from alcohol. I would watch him buy a 12-pack of beer, right? Not just a 12-pack, but a 12-pack of 40 ounces for the evening to himself. And that only followed after he had been caught distributing cannabis to a so-called friend, a low amount too at that, nothing significant, not even close. And it kicked him out of college. He then lost housing, and then kind of reverted back to what he knew, which was drinking. And then within 2 years, he was gone. And it's people like that, you know, another reminder of why I do what I do, because someone did it out of their self-greed by putting him in jail and destroying his life, I believe, because what he was doing and what he thought he was doing, because what he was told, it was not wrong at all. But it's that entrapment method that they put our own citizens up against one another. And that's just not right, not with a plant, especially a plant to this magnitude, where we may not have the scientific proof, but we have a long history of cannabis and its uses, and it's also been in our pharmacopoeia since the beginning. So what are we doing?
Yes, yes. So if people want to support you in your movement, how do they connect with you?
So I definitely mainly try to do a lot of just general posting of the cultivars I'm growing at the time through my Instagram, which is best underscore throughout. It's best of all buds underscore between all the words.
Okay.
And that's usually the best way, especially with this, and my email, which is also aj_warren@live.com.
Mhm.
That's a great way to get a hold of me as well. I'm a full-time dad, single dad at that. I have a 9-year-old little girl, so I have custody of her, and we try to do wonderful things when we can, but I also try to show her that dads can be super hard workers too, just like our moms out there who we need to appreciate more. So I usually have a free reign in what I do. I am an engineer. I do work in research and development, currently working specifically with hemp, polyester, and cotton to try to generate a better recyclable source for those products within clothing. So between us, I recently was able to assist in getting a recyclable rate of 50% with polyester t-shirts,
Wow.
which is amazing considering the overcrowding of textiles that we have in Ghana or on our shores, being ready to be shipped to these countries, so hopefully we can cause a big thing with that. But my mainstay is always and always will be cannabis, at least until the end of prohibition and things are remedied. And I don't see me being here as long as I would like to see all that through. But I made promises to a lot of very prevalent people in my life, as well as in my community, my state, my country, who I held dear. I promised them that I would see this through, and I essentially, with my daughter, we're the last. And so I think we've been fighting for a long time, and we really need to see that things are reversed, and not just reversed, but fixed. I mean, like I said, there's still people in prison. That's my biggest fight. Is I remember seeing that show, the TV show, actually, the first 48. They go out and they look at things in communities. I can't remember what state, but there was an incident where a guy went to go purchase like a gram of cannabis, considered it inferior to what he thought he was purchasing, turned around, asked for another, met with his guy again, whatever, and point blank shot him in front of a crowd of like 200 people at a bar.
Wow.
It's insane to me that his accessibility to cannabis would feel as if that was justified. And that's a mental health problem at its core, right?
Yeah.
So we need to get cannabis away from that marketplace, because I also had a brother who, due to impeding factors with his insurance, Medicare, all this, he wasn't able to kind of stick to the normal regimen that he would have liked to. So he couldn't consume cannabis, and because of their perception with his tattoos and maybe his speech, whatever it may have been, they also didn't want him to have any type of relief from 130 kidney stones.
What?
And so 130, yeah, some the size of a thumbnail, literally. And so with only Tylenol and things like that, because of him being labeled as like a drug addict or being labeled as something or whatever it was, this is a totally different state. He resorted to street drugs instead of cannabis because he couldn't get a job with cannabis, right? It was in a system too long. And so he resorted to more street prevalent drugs, and he ended up overdosing and dying at the age of 28 from heroin. And he was one of 5 of us. So I'm the baby. He was the next one in line. So watching him go so fast, especially when we grew up together, right? So he saw all these great aspects with me, and to lose him for such a ridiculous thing was another reason why there's places like the Heavenly Center in California where they treat people with addictions solely with cannabis. And I believe that needs to be in every state, every city that has the ability to have these centers. You know, because behind the scenes, I've seen a hope more often than not. And if I could keep a medical journal and report this later on down the road, I would, because cannabis is substantial for that regard as well. Not just biofuel, not just fiber, not just textile, etc. There's so many great things about this plant. And that's why doing a collective book like Courage Cannabis with other authors who have that love, the genuine love, where they're actually using brevity in everything they're saying. It's amazing.
Yes,
That gives that verity to the book. So I'm just excited, and I'm so fortunate to be a part of that, you know, because I've had a loud voice for a long time, but kind of behind the scenes because I didn't want to like push too much.
Right.
Because I can definitely buck systems or whatever. I'm an engineer, so I ask questions. I got to know how things work, and this system is not working. And I'm grateful that all of us here are willing to fix that. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
AJ. So we're definitely looking forward to following you. We're gonna
Thank you.
bring everybody else back in for some last words. Wow, wow, wow. What an awesome testimonial from all of you. And the passion is just over the top.
Thank you.
We are so grateful that you said yes to just minding my business and sharing your story and your struggle and your fight to bring awareness around the benefits of cannabis and to support removing the stigma from it that was created on all lies. And that's really bad. That's really a disservice to humanity to even do something like that. I mean, Candy, oh my God, your testimony is off the chain.
So many things physically wrong, and yet cannabis was able to help.
Yes.
And I think that's what I hear is the amazing truth. As Ida said, what we've known about cannabis has been pretty much a lie. And it's been demonized for so long that it's going to take time for people to hear the truth and assimilate it and understand that this is a viable alternative for their health. And hopefully there will be more doctors, more medical practitioners who will really look into this and say, oh, well, this is something that can work for so many of my patients. Why should it be demonized? You know, and to have that portion of the population to get behind it would be awesome. We know that may not happen anytime soon, but it will come. Because I know that there's still doctors who are about life. They are about saving and preserving life. So the work that all of you are doing is phenomenal. And I commend you for your courage.
Yes, for sure. And I'm just grateful that we're part of it. And thank you. Because if you guys hadn't said yes, we wouldn't be a part of it. So I want to thank you. Your stories, Charlana, oh my God, your story. I mean, the testimonials, the work that's going into the fight is just huge. Hey, Mary Jane. She got herself on mute. It's okay. But anyway, this has been amazing. And is there any last things that you guys would like to say to our audience?
stay motivated, please, for God's sake. We need this to go. And by God, I mean anything that you believe in, please, because this is such a cause that's worth fighting. Just stay motivated.
And whatever it is that you do, I say this over and over again, whatever it is you do, whatever your passion is, there's a place for you in cannabis. We need you. We need to have people talk about this at a professional level, at a medical level, at a policy level. Politicians need to hear the real stories. This is transformative. It really is. And it feels it's like a movement. You know, we could really heal ourselves. You know, this could be a turning point if we could do this right. So I'm proud to be part of all of this. This is so awesome to see all of you. So it's lovely. Thank you.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I would just like to mention, especially for the minority communities, the communities hit hardest by the war on drugs, start watching these podcasts, start reading articles, share them with leaders in your community to start having the conversation. We have to start having this conversation because we're missing out from a health perspective, from a generational wealth perspective. This is a new industry and it's all types of opportunities. It's all types of healing that, you know, we haven't even had the research to find out about. So we have to start by having the conversation.
Boom. Agree.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Well, we are so filled up once again with knowledge, with hope, with testimonials before, you know, this amazing plant. And I'm a plant person. I have a green thumb. I take dead flowers and bring them back to life.
Yeah.
So this is definitely something near and dear to me in terms of being a person that loves gardening and loves plants. So I am definitely going to be following each and every one of you and definitely would love to do this again.
Absolutely.
So we definitely appreciate you guys coming on and looking forward to the book. Ladies and gentlemen, the book is Carriage in Cannabis. And when is that book going to be released?
End of the 21? Soon?
End of 21. Okay.
Yes.
So
I put it on my holiday gift list for my readers, for my listeners. So it's coming. It's a coming.
Absolutely.
yes.
Well, this is going to be an awesome read.
Yes, it is. I can't wait.
Awesome
Definitely going to be in my library.
Yeah.
Hey, Miss Mary Jane. Unmute yourself, darling.
Go. I didn't realize that I clicked into this and thought, oh, I've got the wrong meeting tonight. So I left and I went and did all these other things. I didn't even realize that I was on the meeting. I'm so sorry.
Don't be sorry. We're glad to see you.
No, thank you.
We had a good time last week with Mary Jane.
Yes, we did. She definitely has
Powerhouse of knowledge.
Yeah.
Powerhouse of knowledge.
Yes, indeed. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this will probably take 2 weeks for us to get it all edited out, and then it'll get uploaded to our channel for everybody to see.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And
Thank
you'll
you.
send the link so we can share it on our pages. Is that possible?
Oh yes, I'm gonna make sure that you get everything that we produce so that you can put it in your circles, because that's the only way that this message is gonna get out, is that we share it, because you know people, we know people, and the more people hear you guys, the more people will begin to understand that this can be a benefit to them.
Right.
And not
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing so honestly and from the heart. Thank you.